Hello everyone, it's David Swinowski here with Rubble Road Soapstone Kits, and today we're going to have some fun carving the Moai from Rapa Nui, Easter Island. Hop on in here and let's have some fun carving this stone today. So here we have the Moai shape with a basic outline, like an eyebrow ridge, the nose, chin right about here, and that kind of neck. So while the Moai themselves have been known to kind of protrude further into the ground, we just have that basic kind of a head shape here that we're going to work with today. So with the three different stages of sandpaper that we have, we're going to start off with that coarse mesh. Now with the coarse mesh, you're going to notice that it's just grit that's been glued to that mesh paper. So just scrubbing with these open edges is not going to be that effective. You really want to fold that sandpaper up and use that closed folded edge to do your primary shaping for this stone. Now, soapstone itself is so soft we can actually scratch out with our thumbnail, but we're going to use this sandpaper to do a little bit better work than our thumbnails can. Now, when you're making any stone carving, you're never adding stone, you're only getting rid of it. That's going to create a dust. That's why we use the water to help trap all that dust for us, make it a lot neater for carving inside. I like to just dip everything. I'm like an otter when I'm carving, always dipping, always rinsing. You can start off with the neckline to kind of help separate that jaw from the rest of the body. Back and forth. Just a couple passes here. You just want to have a nice bold line. Something that you can see. We don't want to go too far, because if we're going to be putting a groove on the other side here, we want to make sure we have some substantial stone in between here, so we don't want to make it too thin, right? Match up the other side. If you really want to be perfect, you can just kind of carry your line across the back of the neck so that you know where the opposing side is going to match up, and you can just match that up to the bottom of the chin and carve that into the stone. And with soapstone being a metamorphic rock, if you do a number of carvings, you'll notice not every single one of them is the same. As I'm dipping and rinsing my stone, I'm also going to rinse that dust out of my sandpaper as well. So some rocks can be a little bit denser, a little bit more heat, a little bit more pressure. Some could be a little bit softer. So the big trade-off is those softer rocks, they are easier to shape, but if you really want your soapstone carving to be really smooth and glassy when you're done, you actually want a harder stone. Harder rocks can take a better polish, but it will take more effort and more persistence to kind of carve those grooves and patterns into your rock. So with this Moai, I'm also going to create some little earlobes on the side here. So I kind of start with the front end of the ear shape, and I'll just kind of put a groove all the way down. And because I'm going to want these ears to stand out, I'm going to be carving the rest of that face down anyway, so it doesn't matter if I'm carving into the face of this Moai from Easter Island or Rapa Nui. Very cool megaliths out there. Good start on there. And most of the sculptures that I've seen there, the ears are quite long. Kind of reminds me, I'd say, but a little bit of Goofy from Disney, sort of. Very long. I kind of carve until I get rid of that little ridge that I had created when I made the ear line itself. And then I can kind of bring a little bit of a back line here. Line along the back of the ear, just to kind of step those ears out a little bit more. So if I'm carving a straight line, I'm not pushing super hard on the sandpaper. I'm just kind of letting it rest on the stone and holding it in place as I kind of scrub back and forth. If I want to scrub down the stone, I'll lay my sandpaper down flat and I'll use my thumb to put pressure on that sandpaper and carve that rock down. So it's starting to make that ear kind of raise up a little bit, stand out a little bit more. I'm going to work on the other side now, trying to match that up. So I'm going to look, as I'm looking at it from this angle, I can see the lines that I have. So I want to try and match it up as best I can. So even if I just make like a little bit of a zing or a little line, just as a visual. These don't have to be detail lines. I don't have to carve them super deep into the stone. I'm just using these. I could also use a pencil if I really wanted to, but I like to just carve these using the sandpaper. I'm not too particular if it's not exactly perfect. And again, going straight all the way down right to the chin. And if you have a denser piece of soapstone, as you've already made a couple groove lines, you might have worn some of the grit off this sandpaper. It might not be as effective as it was the first time. Open that sandpaper up, refold it in a new spot, and then use that fresh new sandpaper to continue carving and scrubbing into your stone. So I'll do a couple little test lines first, view it underneath. I'm looking at the bottom of my carving now to see how it lines up with the top. That's pretty close. So I think I can commit to that line, so now I'm going to carve that in just like I did on the other side. It's one of our new shapes of this year. Really fun. I really enjoy this shape. Not super complicated, but iconic. And just kind of mysterious as well. Now for that back line as well. Laying it down flat using my thumb, carve away that extra stone. Just kind of make those ears pop a little bit, bringing them out. Carve all the way across. Getting rid of the line across the forehead, or the side of the head here, create the top of the ear. I'm going to carve that until those carving lines that I made to create the ear are gone. Right? And they're lining up pretty close on both sides. So I'm going to match up the bottom. Turn my stone around so I can see, oh, there's where the line is here. Bring it all the way up and around. And if you find one of your ears is a little bit wider than the other, that's fine, you know. You would have to make the larger one narrower if you want to match them up and make them exact. If you wanted to draw these patterns for your ear and, you know, your eyebrow ridge, your nose, where the mouth is going to be, you could always do that as well before you start carving, just so you have that visual. I'm just going to round off the tops of the ears. I do like to leave the base of the moai fairly large and blocky, just because that's going to help it stand a little bit better. So I don't do a whole lot of removal on the base of the carving, but I will do a little bit, mostly rounding off for the most part. And if you want to, you could always just use a fine metal nail or even a small pointy rasp and draw some patterns on there if you want to get really, really intricate and really fancy. And if I start carving the stone away to where the neckline is going to disappear, I'll just re-bolden that neckline on there as well. All right. Rounding off the top of this ear now. Pretty solid ear on that side. Another solid ear on this side. And I'm just going to try and check and see how they're lining up for symmetry. I've got one a little bit longer than the other, so I'm just going to do my best to even that out. Maybe refold my sandpaper, get some new grit there, just to make my carving a little bit easier here. Check the lines again. This could easily go the way of my sideburns, where one's too short, one's too long, and all the way up. So I'm just gonna get rid of those little ears altogether. All right, I think that's pretty good. That's pretty close. Now I'm gonna carve that forehead ridge across. So we have the general forehead ridge right here. I'm just gonna carve in above it, kind of bring the forehead back a little bit. Just so that eyebrow ridge really sticks out. See if I can find a better angle here to show that. Nice. Eyebrow ridge really sticking out. And then we kind of get rid of that extra little bump on the top. Just smooth it all out. Around those corners. Again, I'm just carving in until I can't really grip anything there with my nail. I want to get rid of that little ridge that was created when we made this line right here. Just want it to be nice and smooth, like wrap that forehead all the way around. Make that eyebrow ridge really stick out, really pop. Now I'm going to create the nose. I'll refold this. So I'm going to kind of create some nostril flares essentially on the sides. And then the nose bridge all the way up towards the top. generate those nostrils. Bit of a bumpy ridge here from just the cutting. So I'm just going to kind of smooth that out a little bit more, just to make it a little bit easier for me to create my nose. All right. And if you want to, you can just kind of fold your sandpaper up a few times. Make that folded edge a little bit thicker, a little bit more rigid. And just chew that stone away. As long as you're seeing dust, you know you're getting rid of some rock. And that's what we're doing right now, right? Bit on one side, and I'll go to the other. Just work it back and forth till I really see that bridge of that nose starting to kind of take form. And I'll fold that back up. Let sandpaper really dig in there. Chew, chew, chew. And you could even fold your sandpaper the opposing way that you were before, just to expose that new grit, right? Trying to make sure I'm not touching the very center of the face. I kind of want that nose ridge to kind of stick out a little bit. Right? Even bring curve it up around a little bit on the outside edges of your stone. They really help those nostrils kind of flare out a little bit. Kind of carve those cheeks in. Again, using my thumb, concentrating in that small little area, right? Making sure I'm not carving into the nose right now. Really focusing on the bridge or the cheekbone area. bring those cheekbones in a little bit. Really help flare that nose out. So I'm starting to wear down my sandpaper right now because I'm working on a, not a super hard stone, but it's definitely got a little bit of strength to it. So I'm going to create my lip ridge right now before my sandpaper gets too worn up. If you really want to make your nose kind of protrude a little bit more, you can always kind of really bring in the top of that upper lip to really help make that nose kind of pop, right? And now that I've got a pretty good little ridge going there, now I'm going to go a little bit further down. Kind of carve the chin in a little bit more just to really make those lips kind of purse out a little. Good forehead ridge. Nose is starting to kind of stick out. And then for the lips, I will carve in on just the corners of the mouth a little bit. Just to kind of centralize the lips on the stone itself. In the middle of the carving. So I'm carving the corners down just to kind of get in shape with the bottom of the chin and the top of that above the lip. I don't want any edges that I can kind of grip with a fingernail. I just want to kind of even out the stone itself, so it's not such a ridge. And a little bit on the other side. And we still have 2 more sanding stages to go through to individually split the lips. I'm actually going to save that for the sandpaper number 2. Even though it's a smoother sandpaper, it's still coarse enough and the stone is still soft enough. You can do a little bit of shaping with it. So I'm going to save some of those really fine lines that I want for sandpaper number 2 to put into my carving for me. I can also bring in my nose, round off those nostrils a little bit. And by rounding off the nostrils, that'll also narrow the nose a little bit more to kind of make the cheeks of my moai stick out a little bit more as well. So I don't think that there's any other carvings out there where the nose is as wide as the rest of the face. But if you want to have some fun, put a big nose on it, have fun, put a big nose on it. dig a little bit to where those eye sockets are. But again, I'm leaving the bridge of my nose all the way up the center, right? Trying not to cross that center line. And now I see I have a lot of the grayish stripes, the tooling marks. I'm just gonna scrub the surface of this stone. Right now I'm looking for just a consistent texture everywhere. So I can kind of round off the forehead area and the rest of the top of the head and these back edges if I want to. But I'm really trying to get rid of any tooling marks that might be left behind as I'm doing this. And this is going to make sandpaper number 2 a lot easier for me. You can also round off underneath the chin. So I'll make the chin kind of protrude a little bit more also. But even if I'm not really shaping it, I still want to kind of scuff it up a little bit. I really want to make sure that the texture that's left behind is a lightly scratched texture that I have left behind with this first sandpaper. And this is going to make sandpaper 2 so much easier for you. All about consistency. Out of the 3 sandpapers, sandpaper 1 is definitely the most important one. It does all the shaping for you, but it also prepares the surface of your stone to become smoother once you go to sandpaper number 2. Use your thumb a lot. Just push, push, push. Helps you kind of work in a smaller, concentrated area. Lots of rinsing. I've got a couple little tooling marks in the chin, so I'll just get rid of those right now. Even out the surface. Maybe I'll even round that chin off a little bit more. So now I'm just looking around the carving. I want to see if there's any deeper scratches that I've left behind. And I want to minimize those. I want a fairly easy transition from my details that I'm carving into the surface of the stone. I don't want any deep little grooves that are going to be hard to get rid of with sandpaper number 2. Not bad. Not bad, not bad. Maybe I'll just soften that face line in a little bit more. Just kind of ramp it down. So it just kind of melds in with the rest of that carving. There, I like that better. think I'm pretty close to where I want to be here with sandpaper number 1. Just gotta carve that nose, the bottom of the nose up a little bit, just to flatten it out. Yeah, I like that. Nose, lips, jaw, ears, eyebrow. Did a little bit of shaping on the base here, but nothing too crazy. I still want to leave it pretty blocky. I still want to leave it fairly large so that it's mostly bottom heavy, so that way my carving will sit nicely. I feel like I'm ready for sandpaper number 2. So, take sandpaper number 1 out, which was that 60 grit. Now we're going to move on to sandpaper number 2, which is a 320 grit, even has the number 2 right on there. It's a great way for us to remember it's the second stage. Get that wet as well. Now, when I start scrubbing with sandpaper number 2, I want to make sure that I'm no longer scrubbing my carving on the bottom of my bin. The reason being, as I use this first sanding stage, you can see just how much grit I wore off of this first sanding stage. All the grit that I had there is now rinsed at the bottom of my bucket. So with those little bits of silicon carbide down there, if I'm scrubbing my soft soapstone carving across there, it will be putting scratches back in there. So I don't want to do that. I want to start removing scratches right now. I like to fold up sandpaper number 2 as well, making sure that that black grit is on the outside. And we can use this to start smoothing out and getting rid of the scratches that we've left behind with sandpaper number 1. I also said we're going to make our lip line on the Moai with this, so I'm going to pinch this shut, try and get that ridge really, really thin, center it up, and then just go back and forth. I do it lightly just to start, and then once it's kind of gotten a couple passes in there, it kind of makes a little bit of a groove or like a ditch on the side of the road. And that's going to help hold my sandpaper on track, and I can be a little bit more aggressive. And carve that little lip groove in there. Not bad, not bad. I like it. So I'm gonna go around, making it smooth wherever I want it to be smooth. I still like to use my thumb, pushing this sandpaper around. I do a lot more rinsing with sandpaper number 2 and 3 simply because with a lighter grit, they're gonna clog up a little bit faster. And I want my sandpaper to be nice and clean, so it's going to be nice and effective for me. So I do a lot more rinsing with sandpaper 2 and 3. If you have easy access to water, you may even want to swap your water out after you've finished with the first sanding stage, just so that you know you have less silicon carbide grit in the base of your bin. And if you want to fold that sandpaper up more than just once, feel free to do so. I'll fold it up multiple times, a small rectangle, help do some more shaping, right? It's not going to be as aggressive, but it's also going to do a little bit of shaping for you. Okay? You want to make sure that that neckline ridge, we don't want to get this too narrow, because if we get rid of too much stone and this becomes too thin, it could be prone to breaking, because we do have a softer stone here, right? We're just using a simple sandpaper to carve this, so we do have to leave some structure behind. We can't get super, super thin. Gotta leave a little bit of substance behind. Now you should notice that sandpaper number 2 is going to get rid of those little scratches that you've been leaving behind with sandpaper number 1. That surface should start to shine a little bit better. Now sandpaper number 3 is not going to get rid of any of these scratches. So any scratches that you don't want to see, they should be gone before you go to sandpaper number 3. All the hard work is done with sandpaper 1. We smooth it out with sandpaper number 2, and then we glass that surface up with sandpaper number 3. Just trying to be as thorough as I can. Now, do I always make all of my carvings 100% perfectly smooth? I do not. But if I do want it to be smooth, I have to be very particular and very consistent with that first sanding stage, and then also with sandpaper number 2. It's never just one thing that you're going to do that's going to carve and smooth out your stone. It's always a process, always. The nice thing with soapstone, because it's such a soft rock, 3 simple steps, and we're going to dramatically change these rocks. Another reason I do a lot of that rinsing, not just to keep the sandpaper clean, but all those little black spots that you see in there, those are all little pieces of iron that are just kind of trapped inside of this stone. Some of these smaller pieces, you can actually dislodge them as you're starting to sand it and smooth it. And if you don't do a lot of rinsing, what can happen is you can end up scrubbing that iron across the surface of your carving as well. And that would also guaranteed put some scratches back onto your carving. Lots of rinsing, lots of rinsing. It's going to keep your sandpaper cleaner, more effective, and keep the surface of your stone cleaner. Plus, every time I rinse it, I can see any of the spots that I've missed. So it's great visually as well for getting a far better finish on your stone than just sanding it dry. One of the advantages of carving soapstone over wood, where they do have a lot of similarities because you can use a lot of the same tools on soapstone that you would when you're carving a piece of wood. Chisels and gouges work great. It's going to dull those a little bit faster, but when it comes to sanding, you don't have to worry about a grain when you're sanding soapstone, which I like. You can sand in any direction that feels comfortable for you. Just try and be thorough. Getting into all the little nooks and crannies. If I had some scratches that were a little bit too deep for sandpaper number 2 to get rid of, I would go back to sandpaper number 1 quickly. Run over that spot a little bit with that first grit. Make those deeper scratches a bit shallower so that sandpaper 2 has an easier time of getting rid of them. Working around the mouth right now. And again, fold that up. Trying my best to be consistent. Looking for any deeper scratches, so I've still got a bit around the eyes and that bridge of the nose here, so Got a little bit of a ridge, a little bit of a white line going there. So I might just zip back to sandpaper number 1 really quick. Make that deeper scratch right there, a little bit shallower. So it's easier for me to erase those little scratches with sandpaper number 2. All about consistency with that first sanding stage. Super important. Some of my students think, you know what, I'll just spend a little bit more time with sandpaper number 3, David, and then I'll just make it ultra smooth, right? Unfortunately, that is not the case. Your carving is only going to get to a certain degree of smoothness based on 2 main factors. Number 1, how hard is your stone? Remember how the harder stones can take a better polish, so if you have a harder rock, you can probably get it pretty smooth. But the second main factor is how consistent were you with that first sanding stage. The more consistent the texture you left behind, the easier it is for sandpaper number 2 to get rid of those little scratches, and then sandpaper number 3 just runs in and smooths up that last bit, glasses up that surface. So the sandpaper number 3 is it should actually be the fastest stage. Just a quick once over once I'm ready for sandpaper number 3. Scrubbing the bottom of my bin. Quick rinse. And if you're not sure visually, try feeling. It should be pretty smooth with sandpaper number 2, so if you're not sure if you've gone over that spot or gotten rid of those scratches, just feel it. It feels pretty good. That feels pretty good. And for those of you, you might notice I haven't done anything to the base of my carving. If you chose to do some work on there and smooth that out, and perhaps you made it a little bit too rounded with sandpaper number 1 and you're like, oh no, it doesn't stand anymore, it's a little bit wobbly, you can always use sandpaper number 1. If it's too wobbly and not standing, open up sandpaper number 1, lay it down flat on the bottom of your bin, put your carving on top of it in the stance that you want to stand up, and then just scrub it back and forth a little bit. And that's a great way to re-flatten the base of the carving here so that it'll still stand up for you, all right? But I'm pretty happy. I like this. This is pretty good. Such a fun carving. I think all the scratches I don't want to see are gone. Feels pretty good to me. To sandpaper number 3, the last sanding stage, 600 grit. The biggest number is going last. Get this wet. Again, we're going to use the black grit instead of that blue paper. Quick once over. That should be all this requires. Again, fold that up if you want. So you get into those little nooks and crannies. Anywhere where your fingers don't fit, I just fold my sandpaper to get up in there. Quick once over, that should be all this needs. Nothing fancy. I'm just making sure I'm thorough and contacting every spot, right? And because it's a 600 grit, you're not going to be getting rid of a ton of stone with this. It's literally just getting rid of a light layer. So you shouldn't have to worry about erasing any of the patterns or whatever you put into your stone. But I'm not really working in one spot for too long either, right? I'm just kind of working my way around the rock, around the ears, in between. If you want to, just like sandpaper 1 and 2, fold it up multiple times, right? Once I'm finished with sandpaper number 3, I'm going to rinse this carving in clean water and let it dry. Usually overnight. I like to make sure that my carving is completely dry before I do that final oil. And some of those softer rocks, they're a little bit like a sponge. The outside looks dry, but there could be some trapped moisture inside that stone. So I do like to let them sit for at least 1 day to dry. Those lips too. Again, just being thorough. And if I happen to see any little scratches or something that I didn't like, you know, if I couldn't get rid of them with this third sandpaper, if they're super light scratches, you should be able to. But, you know, if for whatever reason you can't, you might want to go back to sandpaper 2. I really like using my thumb to push that sandpaper around when I'm polishing a stone. I use my thumbs quite a bit. Feeling pretty good, pretty glassy. I'll fold it up the opposite way so I have nothing but grit all over these corners right here. So anything that touches these corners is going to be sanded, right? So I can use that to carve into the eyes a little bit more. Really working that small little area. That off really well. Taking a look, feels pretty good. Looking pretty good, I'm liking it. Hope you're enjoying yours as well. Just around that nose. All right. Pretty happy with that. Very own Moai. Fantastic. I'm going to go rinse this off and get it ready to oil. All right, so now that our Moai is completely dried, now we can get to the oiling here. So we have the little vial of tung oil. I have that little Q-tip as well. I'm going to use this like a paintbrush. And I actually am going to be painting the bottom and the undersides of the carving here first, so that when I actually stand it up, when I'm completely finished, all the oil will just kind of flow down and I can make sure that I've gotten every single spot on this carving. So I'm gonna start around the neck, really get underneath that chin, underneath the nose. And if you can warm up your soapstone before you do your oiling, you'll actually find that it thins that oil out and you get a really nice even coat of oil on that carving. Just making sure I'm getting all of that. Bring out those natural colors, and I'm going to stand it up. All over the base. And now, because I'm holding the top of the moai head, I'm going to oil up the bottom part and then work my way up towards the top. Once I have the stone coated in oil, I'm going to let that sit for about 2 hours, and then I'll just wipe it off with the paper towel that I have it sitting on. I just don't want it pooling up or coagulating in any spots on the carving itself. I just want a nice even coat on the stone just to seal it and keep that beautiful color out. And there should be enough for a couple of coats. So if you ended up with a bit of a softer piece of soapstone, you might notice that it's going to drink up that first coating of oil, and that's okay. Just give it another coat. Try and minimize my fingers on the carving here. Moving it all around, making sure I'm nice and thorough. Looks pretty good. All right, I'm gonna let this sit for a couple hours and then wipe that oil off. And that's it. I hope you had a lot of fun carving this shape like I did. It's one of our favorite new shapes here. We would love to see what you've done with this shape as well. Feel free to tag us on the social medias. We'd love to see what you've done. Thanks for joining me. I'm David Swinowski with Rubble Road Soapstone Kits.